We recently interviewed Guerilla Black.
Saw that.
He did 9 years for credit card fraud. Mm-hmm. And apparently you know a little something about this.
Well, yeah, I texted you after I watched the interview because it kind of freaked me out to think that in like 2003, I was running around doing mad credit card fraud around where I grew up, listening to Guerilla Black, at least some of the time, because that was like around the time that he was making a play and his album came out, I think in 2003, 2004, something like that. And that was when I first heard of him. And then many years later, when I had left the credit card fraud behind, all of a sudden he gets into it and ends up getting 9 years on a crazy ass case. And it just stood out to me because I was like, you know, he took it further than I did for sure. But the stuff that he got caught up, like I'm listening to him describing the process of like, you know, buying credit cards online from a hacker and then putting them onto the credit cards and encoding them and everything. And I'm like, this is the exact same shit that we were running around doing. He did it bigger. And I think when I was doing it, the laws were not very effective at throwing people doing this shit in jail. Because when he's describing the punishment that he got, that is so far beyond anything that I had ever heard of at that time. Because I had a couple homies get caught, like different people that I was doing credit card fraud with. One day I didn't go out with the guys, and there was this Chinese dude that I actually lived with, and he was running around and he bought like a $300 snakeskin belt or some shit at a department store, and he was using a fake credit card, and it popped up on the system that it was fake or whatever, and he tried to get out of there, and the cops ended up like spotting him, trying to make a getaway, arrested him. I think he got a bunch of restitution, and then you know, we had to pay like $15K or some shit like that. But then other than that, it was just community service. Like he had to, and it was funny because he was like kind of homophobic, and he ended up having to do his community service at like an Asian gay treatment center or some shit. So he's like coming home for the first couple weeks. He was coming home every day being like, "Oh, these gay people, this is so weird." Like they're just telling us all the weird things about all these people there. And then after a little while, I think he kind of like got over his homophobia through working there, which was cool. But yeah, I mean, I just like, you know, I don't think the laws were the same, because he's talking about how each credit card that he got hit with was like considered to have $1 million worth of fraud, even if there wasn't actually $1 million worth of fraud on it or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, they threw the book at him. Yeah. He got 9 years.
Yeah.
So you were doing the same thing. You were getting real numbers off the dark web or wherever, and then you had a machine and you were creating credit cards with that machine.
So it wasn't dark web at the time. There were just forums where you could just, I don't know. It seems insane to me too to think that I was in my like college library on the computer just looking at these credit card forums and like sending PayPal payments to these guys who are sending us, you know.
PayPal. It wouldn't even be cash.
I don't remember how we were doing the transactions. It might have been like MoneyGram or Western Union. I remember sending Western Unions for sure at the fucking supermarket and stuff. But it was basically just like us doing that, and then we would just drive around, drive 2 hours, go to a mall, maybe do $10,000 worth of purchases, put it on eBay, maybe make $4,000 off it. I thought I was fucking Warren Buffett, bro, making like $1,000, $2,000 a day off doing this shit with my homies, just going to the mall. It seems insane now, but at the time I was geeked up off that.
You never got caught? Was there a situation that made you stop?
I was doing most of that all around like the New England area, New Hampshire, Boston, that kind of area. And then I moved to New York, and it was like a big part of my plan when I moved to New York was like, oh, I'm going to stop doing the credit card fraud stuff because I feel like New York is so crazy. So, you know, like security wise and stuff like that. And then I got to New York and I was kind of like, man, this shit is not as crazy as I thought it was. So we were definitely still putting in some work when I was living in New York, driving to Long Island, hitting the malls out there and stuff. But we did have one sort of close call where a buddy of mine went into like a video game store and he was buying like some video game systems, and the card came up as stolen or whatever, and we ended up having to basically like rush to the car. We didn't even go to the car. Like I went to the car because they weren't looking at me, but he had to end up basically like running through this fucking forest in Long Island outside the mall, and he ended up hiding inside a Barnes & Noble for like 3 hours while the cops are like going crazy around the parking lot. And I'm just like waiting in a parking lot in my car for him. And then eventually him and the two girls, I was with these two girls that he had introduced me to, and then he eventually makes it back to the car. But like by the end of that experience, I was very much feeling like, all right, you know what?
That's
like,
it.
This is not good for my mental health. Like, as much as I was enjoying the money and the thrill of it, the way that I felt every single time that I went out and did it, it just like wasn't worth it after a while. I was just a nervous mess. Like it just didn't feel good. And around that time is when I started to make money playing online poker, and that's when I basically was like, all right, fuck this shit.
So you got lucky, basically.
Basically, yes.
Right, because just recently, HBO dropped this new series, and TJX6 was on it.
I need to watch this. I didn't see it yet.
I watched it. Because TJ, who I don't know, made this tweet where he was like, "Oh, Vlad offered me $50,000 to do an interview. I ain't doing that," or something. And I'm like, "Huh?" I never even contacted this guy. Then he DM'd me, was like, "Come on, man, let's do the interview."
He's a master of scamming on many fronts.
Yeah, he's the master scammer, right? He's a cap master. But you actually interviewed him.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very familiar with him, just to be honest, right? So then watching this documentary, it's like a series, right? And TJ's actually on the last episode. He's like the finale, and they sort of break down his whole thing, and it's like it's kind of interesting in a criminal sort of way, I guess, where he's just talking about his various scams. So like the easiest scam he said is that you make an IG page of like a hot girl and you post a bunch of pictures and you keep posting it, and you buy a bunch of followers or whatever to make it look legit, and then you just have dudes are gonna start DMing you, and then you just like ask for some flight money or something like that. Then you just keep it.